Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Leela Rhodes and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at NetCom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's event, Microsoft Power Platform Masterclass, and presenting today's topic is Brent Dawson, a driven Microsoft certified trainer with over 20 years of experience. Brent is also a Microsoft Dynamics architect out of London, UK. He delivers comprehensive Microsoft infrastructure and security training, giving students the tools they need to build, maintain, and secure their Microsoft network infrastructure. Bringing over 10 years of experience as a solution and infrastructure architect, he has been responsible for architecting Microsoft-based solutions in Azure, Dynamics, and SQL Server. Now, please bear in mind that this is just an overview of a very robust topic, and we do offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. If you are interested in a further discussion about any of those, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website at www.netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. NetCom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adopting change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We have 9 practice areas in which we specialize, and they encompass people, process, and technology training. And today's presentation is from the business applications practice area. NetCom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio for business application courses, and our upcoming classes include various trainings on PL 900, PL 100, PL 200, PL 400, and many more. Private training to teams is also available, and those learning plans can be customized to the specific needs of that audience. You can also access a variety of business applications, marketing assets, such as the free 2.5-hour training, by clicking on the available webinar handout. And these offerings can also be found with a simple search on our website at www.netcomlearning.com. This session has been designed to enable your team to use the Power Platform to analyze data, automate business processes, and create simple app experiences. Now, I'll just give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started today. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters, so feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters in the questions panel, and we will address them at the end of the session to get the best out of today's webinar. And we have also included the slides, courses we've talked about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer, and you can refer to those to get a better understanding of the topic. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass the time over to Brent to present today's topic. Sorry, I'm getting a little off today. I'm getting over being sick.
So no worries.
Makes my talking a little more choppy than usual. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm awake. That's a start.
That is a start.
Good day, everybody. As was mentioned, my name is Brent Dawson. I am in London, England, so it's mid-afternoon for me. So it's actually been nice. We haven't had much rain lately, so which is good. So today, let's take a look at the Microsoft Power Platform. We're going to take a look at several different areas around the Power Platform. We're going to look at an introduction to some of the components that are there. We're going to take a look at some of the components and services that are available. We're going to look at different scenarios, a couple of examples, and some of the methodologies that we can use to implement solutions in the Power Platform solution area. The Microsoft Power Platform is a low-code. Oops, are you seeing my screen?
I am.
You're seeing it now? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Power Platform is something called a low-code platform, low-code, no-code. Actually, it's designed around the concept of the community developer, which basically works into the assumption that anybody in any system can go ahead and create a application, and that the application can be used in conjunction with other tools or other third-party applications that you may have in your organization, whether they're Microsoft applications or not. And it gives you a way of taking and extending the capabilities of tools that you already have in your organization to a different level. There are 4 parts that actually make up the Power Platform itself, outside of Azure and Office 365 and so forth. And they include Power BI, which is the business analytics tools for doing graphing and charts and reports and dashboards and all those sorts of fun things. Power Apps, which is the application development platform, which is basically allowing you to create 2 different styles of applications. And we'll look at those in a minute, but one is called a Canvas-based app, and another is called a model-driven app. We also have Power Automate, which some of you may have known as Microsoft Flow. So Microsoft Flow was sort of when it first came out 2-3 years ago. It's now called Power Automate. And then the last one is Power Virtual Agents, which is like an intelligence agents virtual bot program solution. The 4 of those applications are built on the data connectors that we have in the environment. So being able to communicate with other applications, whether they're data sources or end user applications, business applications, artificial intelligence through Microsoft Azure and Microsoft Azure Machine Learning, and also through the dataverse, right? The dataverse is sort of the data platform that all of the applications of the Power Platform, including Dynamics 365, sales, marketing, field services, or what used to be called customer engagement, those are all part of the AI Builder as well. Or sorry, as of the Dataverse as well. So one of the things, obviously, that the goal behind the Power Platform is to consume different types of solutions for both web and mobile applications, as well as desktop applications. So it is possible to create an application that you would use not only on a tablet or a cell phone, but also on your desktop. And they all are built once. They all have the same layout. They all have the same functionality. And so you can create highly customized task-based and role-based applications, whether they're based on Canvas apps, where you have data that's coming in from one or multiple sources. You also have the ability to create a model-driven application, which starts from a data model or business process. So let's say, we'll use the good old example of expense reports where, you have to submit them and submit attachments and so on and so forth. And so you can use this process to follow your standard business processes. And you can also combine the two. So you could take a model-driven app that you've written, you could take a Canvas-based app that you've written and merge the two together, where the Canvas-based is the interface for the model-driven application. And these are all, as I mentioned before, fully consumable against applications on the web. They could be used on cell phones, they could be used on desktops, they could be used embedded in other applications, and on any device. Okay. So the nice thing is that it's one of those items that you write once and use multiple times. You don't have to reconfigure it for other platforms to be able to size properly and be able to display correctly on those devices. With the Power Apps capabilities, we also have the capability of integrating automation. The single biggest thing that can save an organization time and money and effort is the capability of automating business processes. And so when we're using tools like Power Automate, we can create automated workflows between applications and services, and automate repetitive business processes, things such as communications, data collections, data migrations, data writing. All those sorts of things can be replicated over and over and over again based on a very simple Power Automate platform. And on the screen there, you can see an example of a flow that you would use to complete some sort of exercise. In this particular case, we're going to be looking at what we're going to do when we're processing an invoice. We're going to get an email that has the invoice attached to it. The AI builder will take a look at that invoice. It will then figure out what it needs to do with it, how it's going to extract specific pieces of information. And it'll either say, okay, it has sales invoice detail information in it, so I can directly go and put it into the sales invoice pen to be processed. Or if it doesn't have that information, I could have an approval process that has to go through. So that it has to go through. Somebody has to eyeball it and actually see what's contained in it. The advantage, of course, of using automation is that you can avoid wasting important productive hours on drafting the same email over and over again. And so you would be able to do this, repetitively over and over and over again as many times as you need to. The advantage of this, of course, is that it's not only for the individual user, but enterprise level and enterprise grade process automation. There is a feature that we'll take a look at a little bit later where we can actually run the Automate tool and it will follow through the processes that we will follow to do a business process, and it will help to automate the automation for us. So it actually is an automation builder that will help us develop those automation features. One of the bigger ones that a lot of organizations use, even if they're not using a number of the Power Platform features, is Power BI, because Power BI gives you access to your business analysis and business analytics through different types of insights, through things such as dashboards, charts, tables, you name it. And unlike SSRS reports, which are primarily just tabular, although you can create some charts in them, but they're very clunky and very restrictive, Power BI is a much more useful data analytics tool. It has a number of different capabilities that you can run against. You can use it against different types of data sources. You can merge data together. You can create offline data sources that you just run reports against and so on. But the key is that it allows you to do all sorts of reporting, and it allows you to present that information in a logical way that users will be able to understand it. There are two different tools that come with Power BI, and we'll take a look at those again. This is just the high-level section, but there's Power BI Desktop, and then there's Power BI, sort of the web version. Power BI Desktop is where you do all your development in, and Power BI Web, Professional, Enterprise, and so forth. Premium is where you actually present it to users in a dashboard format so that they can execute the information. The dataverse. Oh, sorry, I got one ahead of me. Virtual agents. Virtual agents are chatbots. So if you've ever gone to a website and you've, down in the bottom right-hand corner, it says, click here to talk to an agent, and you click that button, 99.99999% of the time, you're not really talking to a person, you're talking to an artificial intelligence / machine learned application or bot. And this is a useful way for you to initiate communications with an individual or an organization, and may potentially be able to help solve a problem. So as an example, let's say that you have a problem with your monthly cell phone bill or your internet bill, and so you go to your internet provider and you click on the bottom button. You say, I want to speak to somebody, and so the virtual agent will come up and says, hi, how can I help you? And it can either let you do a free text entry by saying, I need help with my monthly bill, right? I'm paying too much or something like that. And then it can come back with a response based on what it has been programmed, or it can come up with a list of potential solutions for you. Say, why are you calling? Are you calling about your bill? Are you calling about your service? Are you calling about, an outage and blah, blah, blah. And then if you click one of those, it has a script that it follows internally that will help you to try and resolve an issue, right? So it may send you to a documentation. It may send you to, some sort of help file, or it might give you the option of actually saying, yes, I want to talk to a real person and be able to then communicate through. The advantages of using a bot are that, companies don't have infinite resources to be able to put people on telephones to be able to answer people's problems. And so by using these virtual agents and these chatbots, it's a way for an organization to initiate that communication and then bring it up to an actual real person at the time that they need to. Because there's nothing worse than being able, calling an 800 number for support or something like that and getting a busy signal because there aren't any lines left or there's no agents left to be able to communicate with you. So the next thing is the dataverse. Now the dataverse is the underlying data structure that everything is built upon. So the dataverse is it's a large database structure. It uses a standardized data model to help manage all of your business logic. Okay, it stores information securely. It's scalable. It can contain data from multiple sources. You can integrate that data in business applications using the dataverse model, and it's the common currency, if you like, of all of the components that are part of the Microsoft Power Platform. And they all work together. They all are using the same data structure so they can transfer information between them easily. The only exception to this is if you're using any of the Dynamics platforms. So there's Dynamics 365, so there's sales, marketing, so on, which is, as I said, used to be the old customer engagement tool before they started naming all of them independently. And then there's the Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, which is actually now called Finance and Supply Chain Management. Finance and Supply Chain Management was developed as a separate platform by a different company many, many years ago, which Microsoft acquired through acquisitions and translations. And so that platform does not use the dataverse, or what used to be called the common data model. It has its own data model, its own data structure. And there are capabilities that are built into the Power Platform and D365 Finance and Operations that will allow you to communicate back and forth. One of the tools is called Dual Write, where it allows you to write to both database platforms at the same time. And also, there are a number of business events and data events that exist in the systems that can communicate back and forth. The nice thing is that you don't have to, as a developer or an administrator, go out and create a specific integration and develop an integration for the two systems to talk to each other. That's where the data connectors come in. There are a number of data connectors that are pre-built for Power Automate. There's Power Apps, there's Logic Apps. Those are the sort of the standardized connectors that we can use for these different products. But there's also a number of custom connectors that can be used. There are over 275 connectors that have the ability to communicate with other applications. And so you would use these connectors to customize their own things, such as an API or Web 2.0 communications between the two platforms so that they can go out and be able to transfer and extract information between the two. The advantage, of course, of using these custom connectors is that they can be used in all of these different platforms, whether it's just Power Apps, Power Automate, or Azure Logic Apps, right? And so being able to communicate with all of those different platforms does make a huge difference in being able to spend that information across the board. Now, data comes in two forms, generally speaking. Data either comes as tabular, where it's in a table like an Excel spreadsheet, and the data source returns this in just basically a columns and rows type of structure, and that is a structured table format that can be consumed by your Power App application. The other source of data is generally is a sort of a free flow function-based data source, where a number of different types of functions or rules are used to add and access the data and allowing you to interact with that data source. So as an example, if you are creating a financial statement as an example, you're pretty much going to be using a tabular format for that because it's going to be in the format of an Excel spreadsheet. But if you're creating a Power App that's going to be using a stock trading add-in or an API to be able to download information from the New York Stock Exchange live, then you're going to be using function-based data because you want to be able to extract the information specifically for a group. So as an example, you may have a dashboard in your internal organization, and one of the things on the dashboard is your daily stock price, right, or your constant stock price. And so you would have a Power App using a function-based application or a function-based connector that would then extract specifically the information for your company and then be able to display it on your page. So some examples include things like Office 365 user connectors, Project Online, Azure Blob Storage, using calendar functions between things such as email and non-email applications and so forth. So there's an infinite number of different ways that you can use different types of data sources and communicate within the applications. What makes up the connectors? Once you've established that the data source is there and you've actually can communicate between the two sources, then you need to do a connection between the two sides that will allow the flow of data. And you need to initiate that flow, and there's two ways to do that. The first way to do that is to do a trigger, okay? So for anybody that's an old database person in the relational database system who knows what a trigger is, basically what it is that something happens in the system that basically fires off the next function, right? And so the triggers are used to begin and prompt a flow to execute, okay? So triggers could be time-based, they could be action-based, or a number, any type of action. So it could be based on a mouse click, it could be receiving an email, it could be an entry into a database, that sort of stuff, right? And then once that happens, then the trigger executes and starts the flow to begin, whatever that flow happens to be. And as I mentioned, the actions are prompted by the user or a trigger, and then that will then initiate the connection with the data source for some sort of function. So for an example, you may have an action that would be sending an email to your workflow or in your workflow or app, or writing a new line to a data source, right? So I get an email and it's an invoice. And so that invoice would then, or that email would then kick off a trigger to extract the attachment from the email and put it into an invoice log and do an OCR against the invoice and submit it into the invoices registry in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, right? So there's 5 or 6 steps that are part of an automate process that can be initiated by the trigger, and then all of the different actions that occurred throughout that. There are some important things around the dataverse. Of course, it is your data and it is live data. So we do need to make sure that we are capable of doing data loss prevention. So there are DLP policies in place to prevent environments from losing information, whether they're at the environment level or at the tenant level. There are capabilities there and put in place for data prevention law, or data loss prevention and data selection for removal and so on. There's also compliance and data privacy capabilities and components. So Microsoft does follow standardized rules around data retention, data privacy, and so forth. You can be guaranteed that Microsoft doesn't really care what your data is when you store it in the Dataverse. It's not their interest. The only time that they would ever go there, and it's very rare, is if they had a court order to do so. But as far as them just going and looking, that would not happen. And the nice thing about the Power Platform is that it's available all over the world. It's not just a North American or United States thing. It can be used by anybody in the world. And those Canvas apps have accessibility capabilities for things such as vision losses, hearing loss, and other impairments that you might have that would allow you to prevent you from being able to use the data securely. For European users, it also fully supports the GDPR, which is the European Union General Data Protection Regulation. And this is around, how people's personal information is used and where it can be used and how you can access it and so forth. But they will fully support and do fully support all of those different platforms. So, how do we get it all to work together? Well, Microsoft Power Platform allows you to have a data-driven world. And with that data-driven world, we can find difficult at times to take advantage of different things, right? So as an example, sales and customers and employee data should all drive different types of business decisions, right? But where do we begin, right? How do we know where we're going to start? The Power Platform can add value to any business by helping you analyze and act and automate any data, right? So it's there to help you produce information efficiently and quickly. You can act by building custom applications in the Power Apps platform. You can automate business processes based on the collection of types of data that you've got created in Power Automation and analyze that data that you've collected in Power BI, right? So it is the responsibility not only of an IT department, but also of all the business units within that organization to determine what you should be doing and how you should be doing it within the business processes that you would follow. So let's consider an example. So you have a business that has IT equipment for general use. Okay, so you're going to be using laptops, right? Of course, now that everybody's working from home, the amount of users of buying laptops and Surfaces and stuff has gone up exponentially because, of course, everybody needs it. So we have those general use IT items. Currently, equipment checked out is going to be conducted by visiting the IT office and going and getting that product, making sure the product is available. And then, if it's not available, you may have to go back and put your name on a waiting list, right? I can think back to like when I was a kid in school many years ago, where you would go down to the library and you'd want a book and you'd have to put your name on a waiting list. Or, if you wanted to sign out the slide projector for class, you had to, that's how old I am. You had to go down to the library, to the audiovisual department and put your name on a registry to be able to take out the slide projectors and that sort of stuff. And it's the same, it hasn't really changed in that sense. It's just that we're using different types of equipment. So, you may have to go back and visit the IT department several times before the equipment becomes available, because even though you put your name on a list, somebody might miss it and actually give it to somebody else versus you. And the IT personnel has to stop whatever it is that they're doing at that particular time. In some organizations, you don't have different people doing different jobs. So, they have to stop what they're doing and they have to go and look and see, oh yeah, no, this piece of equipment is available. And then sign it out to you, or come back and say, you know what, it's not available yet, come back tomorrow, blah, 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 So it could be a pain in the butt. Sometimes employees hold on to equipment longer than they're supposed to, right? When that happens, then the IT people have to go and track it down. This takes a long time. This can take up resources, takes up time, takes up you away from doing stuff that's more productive. And so, how do I keep track of all of this? Well, one of the things that I can do is that I can use the Power Platform to produce or to improve this process. So here's some examples of how I can do this. The Power Platform will allow me to build the app that has all the equipment listed. It'll have the status of the equipment. It'll have important information about the equipment, including things such as user instructions, because sometimes something isn't necessarily obvious. You would have a capability for the users to actually sign out and check whether the available equipment is there, or if what they need to do. And then this way, they can prevent themselves from having to walk to a specified location to pick it up if it's not there, right? I used to work at an international airport, And for where I worked, the main tower where my office was on the 6th floor of the central tower. But I had to quite often work at one of the, or go to collect stuff off of the loading dock that was on way down in the south side of the terminal, which was a good 20-minute walk, 25-minute walk between, the two locations, which was great for exercise, but it was a very, it didn't do much for me, especially when I would have to go and pick up something that was supposedly at the loading dock. But when I got there, they either couldn't find it, or there was nobody there, or I just couldn't take it, or any of that sort of stuff. So at that time, this is before the Power Platform was really in use to be able to solve that problem. I would have been able to use and create a tool like this to save myself having to go all the way down there twice a day to be able to get something that I should have known that was there to begin with at the very start. So again, using the Power Platform, we can simplify a lot of the tools and a lot of the processes that we have, because we have that information stored in one location. We have it available for users to look into one location, and then we can allow them to take that information, do with it what they need to, and be able to then decide, yeah, I need to get this projector, I need to get this laptop, I'll sign it out and then I'll go pick it up. Okay. The whole point of the Power Platform is to transform the way businesses work. I know this sounds like a bit of a no-brainer and sort of a sales pitch, but the whole point of this is to make it more efficient, make your organization more efficient. Too many organizations spend too much time doing too many things that are time-consuming. And so, I used to have a manager whose concept of work was, either simplify or get somebody else to do the mundane tasks so that we can do the exciting things. Right? Now, being in IT, to me, an exciting thing is playing with new tools and new toys and that sort of stuff. But it's the same for every business unit and organization. Simplify the mundane things, make it automated so that you can do the interesting things. So as I mentioned previously, the dataverse is the cloud-based solution that will store and structure all types of data and business logic to support applications, processes, and so forth, both in a secure and compliant manner. You have this data that's stored in the Microsoft platform in the cloud. It's managed and maintained by Microsoft. It's available globally. But it's deployed geographically to comply with potential data residency requirements and data restriction requirements. Also, it's things that are stored closer to you tend to be accessed faster. So if you have data that's stored in United Kingdom and you're in California, it'd be quicker if you actually stored it in California. So there are a number of data sources and data centers that Microsoft has around the world, and so you would want to put them in a geographically close location. It isn't designed rather for standalone use on servers. So it's not like you can download a version of the dataverse and download it to your local data store and data server and install it that way. It is a cloud-only application, and it's designed to share data and make it readily available. And as I mentioned previously, a lot of organizations use many of the applications that are powered off of it without even knowing it, including things such as Dynamics Solutions, field services, marketing, customer services, sales, those field services, those sorts of things. And it's part of the Power Apps and Power Automate with native connectivity tools built right in, and including the AI Builder and Portals features that you can use the Dataverse as well. So you can store the data there and then use Azure capabilities to maneuver and execute that data in the system. The old term, as I mentioned previously, is something called the Common Data Model. And basically what the Common Data Model is it's a set of open source standardized data tables and relationships. Microsoft has embraced open source in the last few years and is now part of the Open Data Initiative. And that's the idea behind the common data model, which is the platform and basis for the dataverse. Right? And so by following the dataverse and following these platform rules, it allows you to share information with just about every other type of application that's available in the market, so that you can be able to communicate with those applications, share data with those applications, and bring advantage and tools to your business. Identifying tables and columns. So if you've used the Power Platform previously, it was about a year or so ago, just over a year ago, they changed the terminology and everything. So they went from the common data model to the dataverse. They also went from things like entities to tables, and there was one other one to columns. I can't remember, it's been so long ago. But basically, the types of tables that you have, or the table structures that you have in the Power Platform, include standard tables. So like this is a base set of tables. Every instance of the Dataverse database gets these standard tables, sort of like the metadata management tool tables, and then all of the custom tables that you create, right? So all users of the Dataverse can create custom tables and assign them proper security permissions and access rights and storage requirements and all that stuff. And those are different custom tables that you can add into the Dataverse. All of the columns that you have, these columns allow for discrete pieces of information to be stored within a record or as part of a record in a table. And every column has a type, which defines the way that you store the data. So whether it's a integer or a whole or a text field or whatever. Ultimately, really what you're doing is you're creating a SQL database in the back end that uses this cloud-based data structure to store the information. And tables can be very complex, right? So they could have server-side business logic included in them. They could have real-time workflows and plugins. Some of them have other types of logic that can be added to them. And so you want to try and use the standard tables and columns as much as possible. It is possible to rename a table if that makes the table more understandable for you, right? So you can take an existing one that comes with the system and give it a new name to make it a little bit easier for you to understand. But try and keep the complexities of the tables down to a minimum. It's always best to try and use as much out-of-the-box features and capabilities as possible. Relationships. Data needs to be related to each other in some way or another for it to be usable, okay? If you've got any background in databases, you'll know that there are two basic fundamental types of databases. There's relational databases, where things like SQL Server or Oracle or DB2 or Informix, those sorts of data sources, they use a structured relational table implementation so that data in one table is related to data in another table to do a couple of different things. A, it makes the database run faster. B, it makes it a lot less information to have to be put into it. The way the data is entered into the system is faster and so forth. It also speeds up the process of getting data out of the system. The other type of data structure is a flat file system. So if we're using things like Cosmos DB or JD Edwards or NoSQL or those sorts of things, you have a very flat file system where the tables have no relationships to each other, and you have to put the data in large numbers of information places, or large amounts of information in the same places, replicated over and over again, and then you are responsible for creating the relationships between those data tables. And in a lot of cases, there are no relationships at all, right? So it's a matter of how you actually store the data. Now, the Dataverse is a relational structured, relational tabled database. So there are relationships that exist between the different tables. And so you can actually create those data structure so that the information can be utilized logically. The two different types of examples that we have for relations in the system is one-to-many relationships, where you can, you have a parent-child relationship, right? So here the example is that you have an invoice, which is at the parent table, that can have many line items. It's a child table. Right? Another example that I've used for years for teaching is library cards, right? So as an example, a child can't have their own library card in their own name until they turn 18. And at that point, they'll be able to, have their own library card. So until that time, they are still a child of their parent. And so for them to be able to get a library card, their parent, one of their parents, has to have a library card. And then that library card that the child has is attached to the parent's card for things like late fees and charges and those sorts of things, right? Now, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship, meaning that one parent can only have one child, because obviously one child can exist with, or a single parent can have multiple children, and so you need to have that capability. So this is the concept of a one-to-many relationship. Right? The second is a many-to-many relationship, where you have a lot of different values that exist and can have multiple events associated to them. So as an example, this event that you're attending today, you could be, as an organization, could have sent 10 people to today's presentation, right? But today's presentation could lead on to other presentations, which you could also then have multiple people attending. And so a single event can have multiple contacts that attend that event, and this event, in this particular case, can have multiple contacts attend. So it is more complex because there is more data relationships that need to be maintained, and this allows for us to increase the amount of information that can be worked with together between the different columns. Okay. So if we have a column that allows only unique values, let's say such as an invoice number, and it's used to identify a parent record, right? This column is called a key. And so in database parlance, you have primary keys and foreign keys, parent-child relationships. The primary key is the one where you will store the parent information. And in an organization, pardon me, in an organization, you would only have one customer, company customer, whatever, has a single customer number, right? And you wouldn't assign that customer number to multiple customers. So in that case, you have the primary key, which will be unique because you'll only have one of those customer numbers, and that will be the parent record. The child record will be all of the sales orders that are associated to that customer number. So a customer could order 100 things every week, and everyone is associated to that particular customer number. And so by doing that, you have a way of referencing the information much easier. Also, you have a way of restricting the amount of information that's stored in an individual table. One of the things that I have a weird sense of humor, but one of the things that I like to do when I'm teaching SQL Server classes is talk about this concept of normalization, where normalization is the capability of breaking down individual tables to hold the least amount of information possible, which increases the total number of tables that you have in your database, but it speeds up the way that the data is written into the database based on a number of different factors. So if we normalize a database and we have this parent record, this primary key, we could have many other tables having references to that primary key that hold very specific information. So as an example, we might have a city table, we might have a state table, we may have a product table, we may have a number of different tables that hold information. And all of those may have a primary key, let's say product number, city number, that sort of stuff, which would all be unique. But the primary field of that table would be a foreign key that relates to another table. So if we're having a customer table as the primary source of data, the primary key field, that customer number. So that field, the customer number table, would have the customer number and the last name, as an example, or the customer name or the company name or whatever it is that we're using as a reference for that customer number. And then from there, we would have an address table, which would have just the street address, but it would have a foreign key that would reference the primary key of that customer. And then the same thing for the city table and the same thing for the products table and so forth. And so by doing this, we're breaking down the size of the tables to make it more easily accessible. We're increasing the number of tables, but ultimately we're making the data within the software easier to use. Now, it might seem a little bit contradictory to each other, but it does actually work more efficiently. Different environments that exist in the Microsoft Dataverse. So the idea behind an environment is that we're going to be using this to store and manage and share an organization's business data, the amount of the applications that are going to be accessing that data, the flows that exist within the Microsoft Power Platform. And so we would have within that environment the capability of doing solution development, data storage, planning, testing, and so forth, and then ultimately getting that pushed into a production environment. Right? Now, the nice thing about the way that the system works is that I can have multiples of these environments in my subscription. You could do setup of environments based on geographical location, of their function, a number of different things. So I can have a dev test and production environment in the United States, and I could do a dev test and production environment in Europe. Or I could single out a single dev and test environment across all the geographical locations and then create multiple production environments. The point is that each environment allows you to provision one database and use within that environment, right? Now, one of the questions that I usually get asked is, well, what's the limitations on the size of the data in the Dataverse? And basically, there isn't any. It's part of your Azure subscription and part of your Office subscription. So, of course, that gets tagged onto your data storage uses. Basically, in Azure, you can use as much data as you want. It's just how much you're willing to pay for it. And the same works here with the Dataverse, because that's where the data is actually stored. And so as your data usage increases, your storage usage increases, then your cost will increase as well every month. Each environment is created within under the Azure Active Directory. So using Azure AD, it's part of a single tenant, and the resources can only be accessed by users within that tenant. So again, if you have multiple tenants, let's say that you've got different geographical regions or different countries have different tenants, and you can create Power Platform implementations across each of those. And an environment is also bound to a geographical region. So as an example, the United States. So when you create a Dataverse database, that database is associated with a data center in a specific geographical location. So whether it's the United States or Europe or Asia or wherever it happens to be deployed to, that is where the data is actually stored. And this is important because certain countries, certain organizations, certain industries have requirements about where data can live. From a European point of view, and also you may notice that I don't actually have a British accent. I'm actually originally from Canada, but I moved here earlier in the year. The United States government, with the Patriot Act, basically says that anything that's in the continental United States, U.S. government has a right to take a look at it. And so a lot of organizations and a lot of countries have said, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. If you have data that lives in Ireland or you have data that lives in Germany, the United States government, or any government for that matter, has any right to view that information. Within the last year or so, there was actually a very large court case that the Supreme Court finally ruled on. And it was against, I believe it was against the state of Texas. And basically what happened was is that there was a drug cartel, something or other, shipper, whatever it was. Anyways, they had email that was hosted on Hotmail. And the FBI wanted to be able to read that email because there was all sorts of information about drug deals and all sorts of stuff. And Microsoft said no, because that data does not live in the United States. It lives on a server that we own, but it lives in a foreign entity, foreign legal company, foreign legal state. We don't have the right to do that, and neither do you. And so the FBI took Microsoft to court, and it took several years, but the Supreme Court ruled that if the data is actually housed in a different sovereign location, i.e. a different country, the United States government has no right to view it. So they cannot get a court search order, search warrant to be able to compel Microsoft in this particular case, but it could be Gmail or AWS or anybody else for that matter, to present that information. So the reason that that's important is because if the data is stored in a specific geographical location, then the laws of that geographical location apply to that data. It supersedes everything else, regardless of where the Microsoft happens to be located in that particular country. Right? So if you're in an organization that doesn't want other countries or other people to be able to see that data, then you will store that information in a specific geographic location. As an example, there are provincial governments in Canada that have data residency requirements that are so strict that it will not even allow data to be transmitted through another country. North American telecommunications networks are so integrated together that if you make a phone call from Regina, Saskatchewan to Toronto, chances are you're going to be your signal is being fed through a satellite that's owned by AT&T, right? But there's certain provincial governments that have such requirements that the data can't even be transmitted outside of the country. So, as an example, the province of British Columbia, they actually have a business requirement with their communications partners that data does not leave the country. And so, as an example, whoever the telecom provider is has to create specific connections and specific routes so that data never ever leaves the province of British Columbia. Business rules. So a business rule is basically the steps that are occurring in a business process, right? So business process. Let's say I'm doing expense reports, and I need to submit an expense report. I need to submit the appropriate invoices, appropriate receipts. I need to have it signed off, and then I have the finance department, process it and write me a check or what have you. Okay. So in the old days, I would fill it out, and photocopy everything, and fill out a template, and I'd put it in an envelope, and I'd sneaker net it over to my boss, and hopefully he was there, and hopefully he'd take a look at it today or tomorrow, because the cutoff for payment is Friday and it's already Wednesday. So, he looks at it and he's like, oh, well, you're missing your receipt. So then he has to take it back to you, and then you have to fill it out and submit it again, and so on and so on. And then it gets to, it's too late to get to payroll. So now I've got to wait a month before they do their next check run for expenses, and so on and so on and so on. So it's a really long and drawn out process. It's very frustrating, especially for people who work for organizations who don't have direct payment for things like admins, expense accounts, and so forth. But if I can automate this using business rules for that business process, the first thing I can do is I can get rid of all of that manual processing of the expense report, right? I don't have to fill it out and walk it over to my boss's desk and then have him hopefully sign it and submit it to the next person, and so on and so on. I can scan everything. I could file it electronically. The business rule is that if the the expense is over a certain amount of money, that it has to be manually approved by the manager, and so on and so on. Otherwise, if it's under a certain amount, it could be auto approved, and the next thing you know, it's sitting in the finance department, and then they're going to process it, and then they're going to pay you, whether it's by check or whether they add it to your pay stub, or they make it as a separate vendor payment or whatever. But those business rules that exist within there are how you can automate the flow and automate the business processes. So another example here is that let's say that we're using a Canvas or model-driven app, either one doesn't matter, to set or clear values in columns in a table. You could also use that business rule to validate stored information. You could use error messages that get displayed when something doesn't add up correctly, or something of that nature, right? You could also use business rules in a model-driven application to show or hide columns, enable or disable columns, create recommendations based on business intelligence, all sorts of different things. And so model-driven apps can also use business rules for things such as called fields, custom data changes, interchanging of data, formatting and number formats, and all sorts of different things. The example that you see on the screen here is that we have a rule that says, check if the credit limit is over, say it's $1 million. If that condition improves to true, then you need to set the business required to have a VP approver of that particular expense. Right? If it's under that limit, then it can be automatically approved and you can continue on. Right? So the left-hand side of the columns is the condition, which is the actual validation that you need to do and complete. And then the right-hand side is the actual rule. So the rule says if it's over $1,000, a VP has to approve it. If it's under $1,000, then the manager can just approve it. Okay? And so that's how the rules are created and applied within the application. Power Apps. The idea behind Power Apps and what it can do for you is the sense that it is designed to be low-code, no-code platforms for building applications. Okay? The idea behind this is that you don't have to have gone to university for 5 years and have a degree in computer science and know how to program in C# and C++ and F# to be able to write applications that are usable within your organization. Anybody that uses the system within the organization that has an idea should be able to create an application to make your life easier. Okay? And so if you were to look in your organization and you just kind of look at sort of some of the things that you do you have inefficient or legacy business processes that you would like to modernize, right? I mean, obviously the whole point of this is to make things better, not to make it worse, but ultimately, do we want to modernize things? Are you still moving information around using paper or even a shared Excel workbook? You'd be surprised the number of organizations that put everything in Excel and just rely on Excel as sort of the new version of Microsoft Access. It's their new database that keeps track of everything. And the problem is, of course, is that from a usability point of view, yeah, everybody probably knows how to use Excel, which is fine, but it's not shared. So you need to manually send it to other people, and people will tend to keep copies of it. And so by the time, if you've got 10 people in a department and you're sending her in Excel spreadsheets, before you know it, you may have 25 copies of the same spreadsheet on your file system when you really only need one, right? Unless, of course, you're using something like SharePoint where you can do collaboration. But in general speaking, you have people, making multiple copies of files. It's inefficient, right? It's not a great way to do stuff. Plus, data gets missed that way. Do you want to be able to perform business processes from different devices like a PC or a mobile phone using the same application? Be nice, right? I like to golf. Wouldn't it be great if I'm out on the golf course and I could do an approval of his expense report, by notification on my phone? Hopefully I've set it to vibrate so I don't affect the other golfers. That would be really bad if right in the middle of the guy's swing, especially if it's your boss, your phone goes off. I used to have a boss that we did have a company golf tournament, and we were out on the course, and his phone ring was the for his wife was the it was the ringing that you would get for nuclear, like a nuclear fuel leak or something like that. And so it would be like, woo, woo, woo. And anyways, he had it really, really loud. And literally somebody was right in the middle of their swing, and it went off. It was not very impressive. But anyways, you know, being able to do that sort of thing is advantageous. If you're trying to do any of the things that I just mentioned, then obviously Power Apps is what will make it easier for you to be able to do. So with a low code, no code platform, you can build apps that builds off of concepts that you would use, such as formulas in Excel workbooks, such as sum and text and those sorts of things. You could use Power Apps to build solutions like vehicle inspection forms. You could do things like status reports, business solutions for purchasing processes, inventory management. You can, if you can think about it and you can come up with the concepts, there probably isn't anything that you could not do in the Power Platform to solve a business problem. Okay. Then, once you've figured out what it is that you want to solve or the problem you want to solve, then you just need to be able to have access to the system to actually go out and solve it. And that is as simple as getting access to the Power Platform, getting access to a dev environment or a test environment where you can create using the application builder, and then go out and build it and test it. And the Power Apps tool gives you that capability. There's enough functionality and advanced functionality and the ability for non-developers and seasoned developers alike to design complex solutions and applications with ease. There's quite a famous case study that Microsoft has put together from Heathrow Airport. And if it might be something that you might want to look up after the seminar is finished. But there was a gentleman who worked at Heathrow Airport who wasn't very technically skilled. He wasn't. I believe he was a security guard, if I remember off the top of my head. But he came up with an idea of a way to simplify a specific type of task or exercise at the airport. And so he created a Power App. And he went to the management at the airport and he showed them what this Power App could do. And they thought that this was just terrific. And so they actually took his idea, they let him run with it, and he built a Power App that is now currently being used throughout the entire Heathrow Airport. And they wanted to, hire him as a, solutions person and all the rest of it. And he's like, no, I want to keep doing the same job that I do because I like to interact with people and doing the things that I do. But he was an example of somebody who had an idea of a problem that existed in the organization that he wanted to fix. And so he created a Power App on his own, in his own time, throughout his own learning, that is now used as an enterprise level application at one of the busiest international airports in the world. So if that gentleman can do it, then anybody can do it. So the types of apps that we can create with Power Apps. There are two types of applications that are available. The first one is called a Canvas app. A Canvas app is an app that you design based on the layout of the screen, okay? So when you start creating a Canvas app, you specify at the very beginning the platform that I'm developing it for, whether it's a mobile, a tablet, or a cell phone. And actually, there'll be some new releases. Microsoft just released what they refer to as their Wave releases, and they do these every year. So Wave 1 for 2022 has added some new capabilities to application design, and Canvas apps have added some new features as well. And basically what happens is that once you've specified your screen size, you get that on your development computer, and that's what you work with. And so it has the layout of the screen, and you work within that structure, right? The advantage of that, of course, is that if you've ever developed anything, let's say in Microsoft Access, right, there's a lot of drag and drop capabilities there, where you take the data, or you take different widgets or components and that sort of stuff, and you drag and drop them on the screen, and you kind of make it look the way you want, and then you publish it. Really, when you're creating a Canvas app, that's really all you're doing, is that you're dragging and dropping different features, you're making data connections, you're placing things where you want to see them, you're changing the order of tabbing in the screen and all that sort of stuff, and then you're ultimately going to publish that. And then once you've done that, you can interact with the data in your app by doing things such as adding data sources, dragging and dropping the controls, all sorts of stuff. And in a very short period of time, anybody could, in theory, create a very simple Canvas-based application. Okay. Now, there's no development background experience required. Again, it's a lot of drag and drop. You have to understand how the Power Platform tool and designer works to be able to actually get the stuff on there. But from a development and computer science point of view, you don't need a whole ton of experience background to be able to make it work. Now, that being said, developers who have been writing code for many, many years can still obviously take advantage of this, because they have experience with this, and they can probably mock one of these up much quicker to be able to get it to work faster. So the next type of app that is being created is called a model-driven app, and this is more of a code-based development structure. It uses a dataverse infrastructure to create the application. And really what you're doing is that from the point of view of the data, whereas in a Canvas-based app, you're working from the interface first to the back end, in a model-driven app, you're working in the opposite direction, right? So you don't have to worry about app size, the screen layout, and all that sort of stuff. You're more worried about the back end side of it and how it's actually going to process the information. And you will then use things such as relationships and forms, views, business rules, data layers, all those sorts of funky programming type of things for the model-based app. Now, it is possible to connect a Canvas-based app to a model-based app. So what you may end up doing in an organization, and a lot of places are doing this now because they're actually seeing the advantage of both departments, kind of the end user side and maybe the developer side working together, is that the end user side builds what the layout should look like. Okay, they'll go in and they'll do a Canvas layout, they'll put everything where they want it to be, and they'll say, okay, this is what we want it to look like, and this is how we want it to act when we're going through the different screens of the application. They can then pass that over to the developers or the IT department and say, okay, now you go and make the rest work, right? And so the developers and whatnot will then go in and do the coding and all of the configuration and everything on the back end, and then link the two together so that you have a very powerful application that is not just a very nice, pretty look and feel type of thing, but also an application that is powerful and can be able to do many different things in a high level. And so by using the two together and having both sides of the aisle work together, you can come up with some pretty spectacular applications. If you ever get the opportunity to participate in one, a lot of places have these things called hackathons. And what a hackathon is that it's not, you're going to go in and you're going to break into something. What it is that an organization, you'll go in, let's say you go to a conference. We have them a lot over here in the UK. We have a very large user group on the Power Platform side. And so we will have let's say we'll have a conference. As an example, there's a big one coming up in Scotland called the Scottish Summit. And the day before the summit starts, they'll actually have a hackathon. And so people will, it's free. People can come in and they create a team of people, and what will happen is that at the start of the hackathon, they'll be given a topic, right? So they need to come up with some sort of application that solves X, using some sort of Power Automate or something of that nature. And so what you do is you actually spend the day going through the analysis, the configuration, the testing, the deployment, and the demonstration of an application that your team builds, that you build throughout the hackathon. The last one I was at was they had this little click button device, and I can't remember what it was called, but it used so that everybody created a Power App using Power Automate to communicate with this device, and they could use it to do a number of things. So as an example, they could use it for calling a nurse in a hospital. There was another one for automatically calling a taxi or an Uber if you'd been out to the pub. Some really interesting things and some really cool stuff. There was one that actually was a friend of mine who was the team member, and I told them they should set some IP on their idea, because they could sell it and they could make a pile of money off of it. But if you ever get the opportunity to participate in a hackathon, I highly suggest it. It's fun. It takes a lot of you learn a lot because you work with different types of people, and everybody, by the time the day starts, you kind of all figure out where your niche is, and you can all work together that way. Portals. So a portal is a way to extend the previous applications, Canvas-based and model-driven applications, to the next layer. So a portal will give you the capability of taking those no-code solutions and build externally facing websites. Okay, so you're going to be using the Power App interface, and then you're going to build an anonymous or an authenticated website that allows you to interact with data that's held in the dataverse. So you can see on the screen here that Virgin Atlantic has that sort of scenario. And so they've created a platform that uses the Dataverse portal, and you can then interact with it and be able to to be able to do things with it. The data is held in the Dataverse, and in this particular case, this one could be anonymous, but you could have it set up with specific login information that you create. So you could create your own username and password and store it that way, and that sort of stuff. And it would be information that's specific to you. But it uses the same drag and drop experience that you would use when you're building your app, and it's used to build these interactive websites. And so what a lot of organizations have done is that they have taken their Canvas-based app that they have on their cell phone or their tablet and thought, why can't we extend that to a portal that could be used on a computer? So now you have organizations that have, I can think of a couple of airports that have done this, where you have a mobile app on your cell phone so that you can, you could go around and you can see things. And you also have the same application that shows up on your desktop. So as an example, I know one location that's set up as a work order system, right? So they're walking around the terminal. So if you're an employee of the terminal of the airport and you see a broken light bulb or a handrail or something like that, you can create an observation through the Canvas app on your cell phone, right on the spot. You can take a picture of it, you can attach the picture to it, there you go. Or if you don't have a cell phone, you can use the exact same application. You can go back to your desk, connect to the portal, and you can do the same connection. You can put the same information in, all that sort of stuff, using the exact same application, but you're now using a different interface. You're using a desktop computer interface versus a cell phone interface, but it's the exact same application in the background. So again, you can take all of these applications that you built, and you can use them on all sorts of different platforms to be able to make it most efficient and usable for your organization. So a couple of other things that are important, and one's kind of near and dear to my heart is security. I do a lot of security stuff. So you need to manage security through a tool called admin.powerplatform.com. And so the Center of Excellence starter kit that Microsoft has is a way for you to set up different components or tools to help you get started with developing a strategy for Power Platform, specifically security. It has a set of different PowerShell commandlets that both app creators and administrators can use, as well as developers that allow you to automate many administrative duties, including setting up and managing security and administrating the particular application. Also, you can have it drive business value. So again, users can build applications with ease. Power Apps users will generally be mostly entry-level users that are trying to figure out a way to reduce paperwork and make their job lives a little bit easier, because you then have an automated process or a system-based process. You've gotten rid of the paper. You have a single source of truth because all the data is stored in one location. And you probably made some friends with your coworkers because you've made their lives easier as well. So what is the value that Power Automate brings to this? So we've talked a lot about applications and being able to use different features and those sorts of things. But one of the things that we need to do is we need to understand not just sort of the value that an application can bring to you, but what value does Power Automate bring to you as well? The problem is that when we're working with applications, we don't always get to see the advantages of automation or the advantages of an application. Right? Too many times organizations have come in and they've had projects where they've implemented an application, and honestly, it's made life worse for the end user than it was prior to when the application went in. I can think of a couple of projects that I've been involved with after they've done their initial deployment, where they've asked me to come in and do an evaluation of what the original project did and to see if it was better or worse. And 9 times out of 10, it tends to be worse, because they either didn't understand the business rules that the organization had, they didn't understand the business processes that they had. And so because of that, they didn't do a very good job of implementing the application. And then they would have to go back and they would have to rework a bunch of things, which of course takes time and money and effort, and that's stuff that they didn't really want to or didn't have the appetite to complete. But if we know that we can use the tool to make life better, then we're going to have a better chance of having it adopted by the users. And so if we can explain to them, and as we see here, the value of Power Automate is that it helps you automate repetitive tasks. Again, so it takes the mundanity out of the day. It helps to guide users through a process. So Power Automate isn't just, I'm going to go do some bunch of stuff in the background. It might be that I'm going to create a script that users will follow to complete a business process, right? It might be something that they don't do very often, right? Let's say it's a month-end close or a year-end close process of the finance department, so they could do out their financial statements and stuff. And so you might use Power Automate as a way to do a script for people to follow so that they can actually do the process properly and they don't have a chance to make any errors with it. You can also have it as a way for connecting to external data sources and automating desktop-based processes. I've known organizations, as an example, that heavily monitor Twitter for comments against their organization. And so not every organization has people that work 24/7. So they'll create a Power Automate that will monitor their Twitter feed and will look for negative keywords. And so for things like hate or dislike or unnecessary, or it's just whatever the keywords are that have negative connotations in it, or phrases that have negative connotations to them. What they will do is that the Power Automate will record those, will send a note to a system, and will automatically generate a tweet back to the person who created the tweet in the first place. And it can extract that information from the Twitter account that sent the information. And so what it does is basically it sends back and says, we understand that you had an issue, and we'd like to apologize in advance, but all of our staff has gone home for the day. We will email you tomorrow to get a better understanding of what the issue was, and hopefully we can help you rectify it. Now, this was an airport that had this little tool set up. And so usually what they would do is that they would go and find the user, and they would offer them free parking. So if they had parked at the airport and had gone away on a flight or whatever, when they come back, they could pick up a parking voucher, and their parking would be paid for the whole time of their trip. So they could save themselves, $200-300 potentially on parking charges. So there's a simple example of being able to use the Power Automate as a way to simplify how you do things in your organization, right? But again, there's a number of different scenarios, automating repetitive tasks. So moving data from one place to another, sending an email and then attaching that email and uploading it to a different location, all sorts of different things. And there are 1,000 different templates that you could automatically implement as part of the Power Automate structure by going to the Power Automate App Source website that Microsoft houses. And there's a number, I could probably think of about 400 of them off the top of my head that could be used in just about any organization on a daily basis. And they're free to use. You just go in, download it, implement it into your Power Automate platform, customize it specifically for your organization, and you're done in half the time that you would normally have to go through to create some sort of automated process. Scaling, because we do need to be able to scale out automation and make it efficient. We need to be able to do certain things in the system to improve the business processes. So first of all, using pre-built templates. As I mentioned before, there are a number of built-in or pre-built automation tasks, workflows that can be used that are basically templates and then tailored for your specific organization for automation. There are 300 plus different connectors that are already created for you to scale and automate across favorite apps and services. You can integrate them within the Microsoft ecosystem. So not only can you integrate with Microsoft Office, but you can also do it with Azure, Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, other external things, Facebook, Twitter, any other social media site, those sorts of things. And it allows for both on-premise and in-cloud access. So if you have applications that run on an on-premise database or an on-premise application in your data store, location, then you can interact with them the same as if they were all in the cloud. Okay, so it does allow for these integrations between data that is both on-prem and in the cloud, whether they're locally hosted or SaaS-based solutions. But again, you can communicate between the different systems and be able to have that data work together. So a couple of examples here of how we can use Power Automate. So here's an example of a purchase order approval. Okay, so approvals are a great process to build around Power Automate. They're often defined yet manual. And here we have, as an example, we're going to say, we're going to use the get manager information. So we're going to look at the user's UPN info. And here the user starts the process by going into Power Apps and creating a purchase order request. And the purchase order request will then have to be submitted. The request is then the information will then have information sent to the Power Automate flow. Once the flow kicks off, the flow will evaluate the request and then route that request based on whatever criteria you've had as far as the submitting user and the amount that's been requested. Okay, so here we're looking at, the first thing we're gonna do is look at the user's UPN, and then we're gonna look at the approval process. So the approval type in this case is a approve reject, first to respond. So there might be a couple of different people that have the capability of approving, but whoever does it first is the first one to do it. That's all you need. And then you're gonna get an email that says, please approve this purchase order. And it's going to be assigned to whoever the manager is, which is what was caught from Get Manager in the previous step. It's going to have the details. It's going to have the specific link that will support the approver approving that document, and then a description of that link. Okay, so that's the first part of the approval process. It's actually finding out who submitted it, who their manager is, creating the email, attaching the information, and sending it to the manager. Then, as part of the purchase order approval, the manager will receive the approval and has the option of approving or rejecting. In this particular case, let's say that they approve it. Then the flow can provide conditional logic to finish the execution. So in this case, we ask the manager for approval. Okay, if it's over $10,000, there's our condition. If it's yes, we need to ask the VP for approval. If it isn't, then the email is approved less than $10,000, and we terminate the automation, and it's done. Okay. If the answer is no, it's not over $10,000. No, we don't have to ask the manager for approval or some other reasoning. Then we could just have it break out and say, no, the email is not approved and it's been rejected, and you could put some logic in there in this particular case. And so this is an example of what a flow would look like, a typical flow for an approval process. Now, this could be the same whether we're doing, in this particular case, purchase orders. We could be doing it as an expense. We could do it being invoice approvals. There's a number of different things that we could set up the approvals to work with and complete within the environment. So the three types of power flows that you can create with Power Automate: event-driven flows, where you have somebody that has a trigger that executes, and then one or more actions against that trigger. And there are a number of different types of triggers that you can use to execute. And again, it could be clicking a button, it could be data update, it could be something else. But an event itself is actually what's kicking off that Power Automate to complete. Business process flows are built around and are used to augment the experience when using model-driven apps and the dataverse. As mentioned, these are generally going to be used as a guided experience so that you can see how the application is actually running. And a desktop flow. Desktop flows used to be called UI flows, and these are basically robotic processes that you would record yourself performing the action on your desktop or within a web browser, and then can trigger a flow to perform that process for you. And then once you've done that, you can also add customizations into it as well. And so what the desktop flow does is that it records all of your screen capture. It basically does a background screen capture of all of the steps that you're doing to complete the execution of a business process in a legacy system, and then generates a flow for it so that you can have it automated for you in the system. We're getting close to the end of the slides here for this particular section, but the last couple of things I want to talk about are artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is a way for us to take some of the machine learning capabilities and smarts that exist in Azure and add them into our flow. And the advantage of doing this is that we can insert and add these features in without having to do any coding. And of course, again, this is the whole idea of this is to do low code, no code development for an application, and make life a lot easier for users. So there is a wizard at make.powerapps.com, and it'll guide you through building and training the model for your flow. So there are 4 available AI models that you could build. There's a form processor, where it'll take and extract text from an uploaded image or taken photo and then repeat back and store that information for you. So, this would be good if you do a screenshot of a whiteboarding session or of an invoice or receipt or something of that nature. An object detector, so it'll identify an object from an uploaded image or taken photo and then provide the count of the number of objects present, number of people, number of whatever. If you're into counting animals, I wonder how many cows are in that field. You can run the AI tool against that. You can do prediction, and here you've got a model that predicts whether something will happen or not based on data history and seeing how things are occurred around that. And text classification. So being able to categorize text by its meaning, making it a bit easier to analyze. So basically what we're doing is you're doing like OCR against different types of text and picture, and being able to interact with it, between the different systems. Sorry, 1 second. So the last thing is the idea of the Power Virtual Agent. The Power Virtual Agent is a tool that you can use to make your team better. It can help to be a way for you to reduce costs, as well as improve customer satisfaction. Okay. And so you could do things like resolve issues quickly, 24/7. You could do personalized bots that can communicate with them. Obviously, reducing costs, as I mentioned before, reducing the number of phone lines or people that could actually have to pick up the phone when somebody has a problem, or also empower teams to build chatbots themselves. It's easy to get started. It's a software as a service, so it's a SaaS-based solution that you can access through Microsoft. And basically, you're creating rich, enabled conversations and natural conversations using standard communications, right? It is capable of communicating in multiple languages, so you're not restricted to just English. You could, build Spanish and German and French and all sorts of stuff. And so you can then, communicate based on the language that the person comes to the application with from their web page. So you can actually take a look at the default language of the web page and then of the end user, and then find out what region you're in and present the information to them in that language. Again, it's a way for you to just make life easier for both and more efficient for both the end user and the organizational users. Again, if there is a way to initiate a support case or being able to solve a problem or something like that without having to interact with a real person, but make it act like it's acting with the real person, then you've reached your goal, right? Being able to solve the problem quickly, efficiently, and without the minimal aggravation for the end user, so that they don't feel like, I'm just somebody sitting in a line. I could be here forever before I'm able to be helped. So the virtual agent components are based on topics, okay? And a topic defines how the chatbot will converse with the end user. The author's topics by customizing provided templates, so you can take ones that exist and you can modify them. You can create new topics from scratch. There's an existing help site that has a whole bunch of different suggestions that you can use to build those out. And the topics are generally broken down into user topics, such as customizations for things like billing and support and all that sort of stuff, or there's systems topics, and these are pre-populated topics that you're likely to use during a chatbot conversation. Even though you can create user topics, for user-related things. It's best to stick to system-based topics because they are pre-created and they are easier to create end-to-end chat conversations with rather than user-based topic that can go kind of all sorts of different directions. Entities in the Power Virtual components. The entities are viewed as information units, and these are certain types of real-world subjects, such as phone numbers, zip codes, cities. These are pieces of information that are stored in a database record, and so they can be used within the chatbots as well. And there are a number of entity types. So there's a whole pile of pre-built ones, which are generally going to be the most commonly used types of information in real-world dialogues. But you could also create your custom entities. So you could take pre-built ones and modify them for your own purposes as well, so that you can get specific language understanding models for your individual chatbot. Power automates actions. So again, much like a flow, and really this is a flow, you will have it create different actions through Power Automate. So you can call flows from within the different topics that you have. You can utilize them to work with already created applications in your environment. Or you can also create a flow from within the Power Virtual Agent canvas, much like you see on the right-hand side there on the screen. So instead of using an existing flow that you call, you can actually integrate the flow directly into your virtual agent canvas. And the last slide for this section and for the show is the virtual agent publishing features. Once you've created all of the settings and you've tested it, you need to then publish it. And then by publishing it, you'll be able to access the information from the different locations. And you can publish it to all sorts of different places, and the list is endless. But basically, you could do different types of websites. You could do it as a mobile app, to Facebook, Microsoft Teams, Cortana, Slack, all sorts of different channels, Twitter, you name it. But it does allow you to publish them. And there are a number of different connectors that are pre-built that will allow you to publish those. Really, the only condition that you need is that the users need to have some sort of authorization identity provider on the other end, so that they can be able to put the information into those locations. So that covers the presentation material. There is a secondary slide deck that I will like to show you here for a second before we carry on. And this is a little bit around the Microsoft Learning platform, and sort of continuing to do learning. Obviously, this was a very high level sort of fire hose exercise today. But Microsoft has hands-on learning labs and Microsoft certification courses that companies like NetCom use to enhance users' knowledge and ability to be able to go back to their workplace and use the tools that we talked about today. So as we said today was sort of a master, a 20,000-foot view of all of the information. But there are some very good deep dive courses that are available that Microsoft has created to learn all this information. The PL 900 course is the fundamentals course. This is sort of the how does it work and how do I make it sort of do it at a very high level. PL 100 is Power Platform App Maker. PL 400 is the developer level one. So you're going to be doing more advanced applications from both a Canvas and model-driven application point of view. DA 100 is the data analysis class, and it's very good for doing Power BI and doing things like reports and dashboards and KPI settings and that sort of thing. PL 200 is the Power course. Again, it's sort of one step lower than the PL 400. And then PL600, which is the power. This is the one where if you're going to be the one that's architecting and designing these systems and then giving them to other users to be able to develop them, then that's the certification that you require. All of these are instructor-led trainings. You have 180-day access to all the virtual lab environments. So even though you'll be going through and doing all the lab exercises as part of the course, you can go back and reset your services to be able to redo the lab exercises for up to 120 days. Up to 180 days from the time that you start the course to the time that the virtual machine runs out. The other advantage is that it gives you a platform that you can go in and try other things as well besides of what's in the lab guides to be able to create your own applications and your own dashboards and that system that you know you're not going to cause any problems with in terms of server admin or any of that sort of stuff. Helps you to stand out. A lot of organizations will support the education of their end users through examinations and courses. In some companies, you can earn up to almost 25% more based on, from the salary point of view, based on people who are not certified. And a lot of the cloud certifications will help to increase your employability, only for the simple fact that right now in the market there is a shortage of qualified cloud technicians and cloud administrators, cloud users that companies are willing to pay good money to hire. And so to prove this, you would use the Microsoft badges. So after you've completed an exam and you pass the exam, you are generated a Microsoft badge that you can put into things such as LinkedIn or Twitter, Facebook, whatever platform you use, and it will be a way for you to show that I've actually created this and have the certification. The data in itself talks. There's as I said, there's an event handout called the Win-Win of Certification, which you can download as part of your package. And just reading through that, it'll show you some advantages and examples of how having a well-trained and certified group of people in your organization can make them more efficient, can make your organization more competitive, and will help you to retain staff because they feel like they're being more useful and that they're providing results to an end user group that's appreciative of it. So some facts about Microsoft certifications. Most of the role-based and specialty certifications expire 1 year after you've passed the exam. And Microsoft does this renewal process now. So 6 months prior to before your exam expires, you will be notified that you have to upgrade your exam, or you have to do the renewal. The exams are free. They're done on the Microsoft Learn website. So you don't have to register and take the exam like you did previously when you had to take it the first time. It's not proctored. It is done on your own time. And again, there's a free renewal assessment available for 6 months before your certification expires. And it's a way to keep learners up to date with the new features and new technologies that have been added into the tools since you wrote the exam the first time. If you do not pass the recertification exam prior to the expiry date, then you will have to write the full exam, which means that there will be a cost. You do have to have it proctored or go to a testing center and all that sort of stuff again as well. So if you can, you're better off doing the renewals much sooner than than having them expire. In my own case, as an example, I have 5 exams that all expire within about a month and a half of each other. So for the next 6 months, actually starting in May, I'm going to be quite busy getting all the renewals done, but I'll just try and bang them all off one at a time, and or all of them at once over a weekend, and then it's done and over with. So now that that's been presented, I'm done, and hopefully everybody will get trained, get certified, and be useful and productive Power Platform partners. Leila, back to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking such a great amount of time to kind of cover this subject. I know that you could probably keep going forever just about with this, but obviously we don't have that much time. We are going to, while everybody's gathering their thoughts and they're getting their questions into the questions panel, we're going to take a quick moment and hear from Sagnik. He's our vendor marketing manager. He's going to introduce some of our promotions and webinar related courses. I'm making him the presenter right now.
Thank you, Leela. Is my screen visible?
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you, Brent, for that awesome session. As always, it's an absolute pleasure to witness you in all your glory. So I'll just take a moment to take all our participants through one of the collaterals that are being, that is being shared with them as part of today's session. That is the event handout. Now, one reason why we encourage all of our participants to go through this is it acts as that reference point for everything related to the topic that was covered in the course of the masterclass. So you'd find a lot of important assets and resources related to Power Platform on this collateral. So I'll just quickly take you through and give you a brief idea of what is in store when you go through it on your own. So first up, you would get some basic stats about knowing about NetCom learning. So we are an organization, we are with over 22 plus years of experience in this training industry. We are a leading US managed learning provider. We are a gold partner with Microsoft, and we have been recognized by Microsoft as the #1 training partner of the year before. And we have serviced 80% of the Fortune 1000 companies. We have served all branches of the US government, including the Army. And, all in all, we have been in this domain for a long time, and we understand the value of being of learning and continuous upskilling from both the employee or the individual's perspective as well as the employer's perspective from an organizational perspective. We are an authorized training provider across all the top leading IT and business solutions providers, the business vendors that we have, starting from Microsoft all the way through AWS, Cisco, PMI, you name it, we are an official partner with them. So we really are the one-stop solution for end-to-end upskilling across domains and platforms. The link to the recording of the session. So the session was being recorded, so you can access the recording anytime that you want. The link to the session recording has been included in this handout. One natural question that people have is some of the participants, they're interested in getting access to two aspects, right? One is the official Microsoft courseware that you get. That mock you can access through the NetCom 365 student or the learner portal that now you have access to. So please feel free to go through the steps that are mentioned on this particular slide in the handout. So access and activate your portal if you haven't already, and you would be able to access both your session, the participation certificate for this particular masterclass, as well as the book, the Microsoft official courseware for PL 900 in there. Apart from this, I'd like to quickly take you through some of the options, some of the promotions that we have going on. So Brent very, very, very nicely pointed out the value of getting certified. And there is a supporting collateral that you have access to. That is the win-win of certification, the ebook. That is an official Microsoft ebook. It has a ton of information. It has data from researchers that have been done, the surveys that have been done from both the employees as well as the employer's perspective. So that's what the win-win is from both the employees as well as the employers. And it has all that wealth of information that you can refer to, and you can understand whether certification is something that resonates with you, the value of it. And if you are interested in getting that official seal of validation from Microsoft, getting certified is the way to go. And to enable you and empower you in that process, we are currently offering some very recent discounts on the exam vouchers. So for fundamental exams, you get a 40% discount. You can avail those for $60. And for the advanced or the role-based exam vouchers, you get a 25% off. So that brings the cost to $124. So feel free to go through it, understand what are your requirements, and raise your requests if you feel so. These offers are valid in United States, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. The handout also includes the link to the ebook that we highly recommend that all of you go through and you share with your communities and your networks, so that everyone can understand. And it's a really good piece of information that everyone should be looking forward to. The NetCom Plus subscription is kind of our great value offering that is ideally positioned towards individual learners. So it is an individual learner subscription that gives you access to over 500 official training classes. And from Microsoft alone, we have over 60 official VILT, the virtual instructor-led training courses, as part of the subscription. It is valid for 12 months, and it gives you that flexibility of continuing your upskilling journey all around the year. It comes at a very valuable price, high value price of $2,999 per learner per year. But of course, if there are multiple, if you are an enterprise and you're looking to enroll multiple people in your team, so we provide enterprise discounts on that. So for more than 10 learners, the cost is going to again significantly drop. So it's the ultimate value. Also, for enterprises in particular, we have the Learning Passport. So it is basically the all you can have kind of thing. So when you get you get access to the entire portfolio that NetCom Learning offers across all the vendors. So that accounts to more than 4,000 official courses across all vendors, across the entire NetCom Learning portfolio. Again, available across 12 months, but it's a great value for enterprises to look at something. Also, in this collateral, in this handout, you'd find the related official Microsoft courses that are based on Power Platform. So what are the fundamentals and the role-based courses that you can explore and choose whatever fits your needs. If you're looking for more interactive master classes, we have 2 further master classes coming up in the coming weeks and months. The Azure Data Fundamentals in February, and the Azure Dynamics and the Microsoft Dynamics 365 in March. So feel free to explore and continue your learning journey with us. That's all. Thank you so much. Back to you, Leela.
Thank you. Okay, so we just have a few questions that I'm seeing right now, and we'll go ahead and jump right into the question and answer session. Let me show my screen real quick. The first question I'm seeing is, does Power Virtual Agent work with Teams?
Yes. So you can put virtual agents into Teams. You can put it into Skype for Business if you still have that, but it is possible to put it into Teams. I've seen it where organizations will actually use a public Teams account that people will log into, and then from there they can get into the chat to the virtual agent and then communicate through that.
Awesome. Let's see, our next question, and as soon as our questions are wrapped up, we will go ahead and wrap up the session. So if you do have any questions, go ahead and get those in as quickly as possible. How is Power Platform licensed?
Well, complicated. So you can either set up a Power Platform subscription through the Microsoft website, so you can go there and you can subscribe to it. If you have an existing Microsoft M365 account, you can license it through there. You also have access to it through Dynamics platform. So if you have Dynamics 365 sales or any of those sorts of things, you get access to the Power Platform. Or if you have an enterprise level agreement with Microsoft, you will also get access to the Power Platform that way. Depending upon which of those methods that you use to actually get your subscription, will determine the overall costs that you'll have to pay for your platform access. Although Microsoft did announce last fall at the Ignite conference that they are going to a pay-per-use subscription model for Power Platform, much like many of the other tools, such as Azure. So your overall costs should be less than what they would have been 6 months ago.
Thank you. Our next question, I'm not positive, so they may need to elaborate if you're not sure what they're saying. They're just asking, have all vouchers expired? So if you can elaborate on that question.
I don't know what they're talking about. I'm guessing they're probably talking about exam vouchers. And I believe exam vouchers are only good for a year, but somebody from NetCom will have to answer that.
Sagnik, do you know?
Yeah, I think so. The way we have originally run that offer, so it was supposed to end on 31st of January, right, 2022. But we have decided, so it's going to be shortly reflected as we get into February. But we have decided to stocks last. So we have, looking at the demand and considering the demand of these vouchers, we have kind of, got some allotment from our end to help our learners who want to, enjoy that benefit of that discount while getting certified. So yes, it would be, it's not an ongoing thing, but we do have a stock that would allow us to continue that promotion for a while. So if you have any interest in buying these certification exam vouchers at that discounted price, feel free to go ahead, follow the link, follow the form, and go through that process. You will be able to avail that discounted price.
They said that the training voucher disappeared, I believe. So I don't know if they're just not able to find it anymore.
Okay, no, it should be there.
Do you want me to share the screen with you real quick?
Mm-hmm. So if you go to NetCom Learning, right, and you go to promotions, you'd have this over here, right? Season's lowest prices on Microsoft certification exam vouchers. We are going to revise this starting February, but you can still go there. This is the page, and it's the same link that you'd find if you follow through the links that are included in your handout, right? So you can go here and you can scroll through and you can find that the discounts are listed here. You can just fill up the form and you can raise your purchase request. We'd be getting in touch and we'd be processing that request for you. And you'd be able to get that spatial pricing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next question I'm seeing, sorry, one second. Can you differentiate between what Office 365 E3, E5 and E5 provide for licensing versus Premier Power Platform licenses?
It's been a while since I've looked at them. I know, like, for instance, E5 with specifically around the Power BI side of things. The license includes an enhanced portal license, so you get the Power BI portal access that you don't in other versions. But again, I don't specifically know off the top of my head the differences between them. As I said, they keep changing the licensing requirements. Your best bet is to just to go to the Microsoft site and look up the current E5 offering. As I say, I haven't looked at that for quite a while, so I don't really know the answer to that one.
Thank you. So this is the same person. Licensing, if Microsoft is moving to usage-based licensing, what happens to per-use premium Power Automate and per Power App licensing on tenant? Is it auto-converted to the new model?
Okay, again, that's another question I don't know the answer to because they haven't released it yet. But again, that's something that if you have an E5 agreement or an enterprise agreement, your licensing partner or whoever you bought your licenses through would be the best person to communicate with that with. I can't necessarily give you the best answer, but they should be able to.
Thank you.
Licensing, by the way, is my least favorite topic in the world.
Okay, let's see. Our next question. How can I populate an Excel spreadsheet with images as opposed to links from Microsoft Form using Power Automate?
Take the class. that's not an easy answer to give you over this session. That's something that I mean, you could. Okay, so as an example, and if you put a comment in an Excel field, you can add an image into the comment field, and then you'd have to be able to convert that to something that Power sorry. That's a dataverse could answer, but yeah, I can't give you a simple answer right now on this one. That's a very complicated process.
Okay. Yep. And that's why we do, kind of preface with saying that this is an overview of a very deep topic, which, it's great to be able to get that overview, but some of the stuff you actually have to take the training for. Let me look at the time. Okay, so we'll take one or two more questions here, and then we will wrap up. Are there any free versions of Power Platform?
No, everything you have to subscribe to Power Platform. None of them are free.
Okay.
Well, sorry, I take that back. The only free version is at Power BI Desktop, but that's only free for the person that's actually creating the visualizations and the dashboards. If they want to share anything that they've created with anybody, they need a license. So I guess that technically that's the only piece that's free.
But could provide a way for people to play around with it.
Yes, yeah. But that's only limited to Power BI. That's it. Okay.
And the last question I'm seeing before we wrap up is, can you integrate Power BI with D365 FinOps?
Yes, so you can. There's a number of different ways that you can do it. You can either use it as a data source to create dashboards, or you can also do embedded Power BI, where you actually embed a chart or a visualization directly into a dashboard in Dynamics 365 at the end user level. So there's a couple of different ways that you can integrate the two of them.
And real quick, someone did make a comment. They said, as far as I know, Power Automate Desktop is also for free. Is that true?
Yes, that's free as well. But that, again, that doesn't give you, it only gives you the capability of creating the recording of the automations that you're creating. It doesn't actually let you do anything with it. So you have to have a Microsoft Office subscription or a Power Platform subscription to be able to actually utilize the Power Automate features.
Wonderful. Okay. So with that being said, we're to the end of our questions. So we are going to go ahead and launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. In addition to today's course, today's webinar event, we have a lot of informative webinars that are coming up. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to register for any of those. We want to thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday to join us. If you do come up with any additional questions, please feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope you all found today's webinar to be very informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Also, feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Sagnik. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.